Welcome to the Boar's coverage of the 2026 SU Spring Officer Elections, where we are offering all candidates for full-time officer positions interviews ahead of the big decision. I'm Smiley, the current Deputy Finance Editor, and today I'll be interviewing Ronny Whetton, running for the position of VP of Postgraduates in upcoming elections. Welcome, Ronny. So let's move on to the first question. Why did you decide to run for this position, and what makes you stand out from the other candidates?
So I decided to run for this position first and foremost because I think there are a lot of problems with the way in which postgraduates are represented within the SU, because obviously postgraduates make up over a third of Warwick students, and I think up until now the SU has somewhat forgotten that fact, especially when you consider the kind of diverse backgrounds that a lot of postgraduates come from. You know, we are one of the most international universities in the world. We have over 10,000 international students at undergraduate and postgraduate level. Postgraduates have a massively very diverse range of needs, range of interests, and I think that from my experience working within SU structures in my undergraduate and also this year, I think I am best placed to understand what needs to change, how we can change it, what needs to be improved, and how we can make the kind of overall student experience much better for postgraduates, but also undergraduates seeking to become postgraduates.
Okay, thank you. Many postgraduate students feel disengaged from the SU, societies and sports clubs, as you mentioned. How would you make the SU more inclusive to postgraduates?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I think we need to make a very clear distinction between PGTs and PGRs, because obviously PGTs, being a taught course, they are just fundamentally more engaged with the academic side, whereas PGRs oftentimes can feel left behind and maybe not as represented because there's a diverse range of bodies that actually are representing them. Obviously, you have the Students' Union with regards to representation academically, but then also you have workplace unions that represent them in terms of the workplace setting. I personally feel like there is a massive amount that can be done in terms of eligibility criteria and just overall SU structures to improve outreach and engagement to PGRs and PGTs. First and foremost, I think we need to make sure that we're meeting both groups where they are, rather than asking them to just come to us, because at the end of the day, a postgraduate degree is incredibly time intensive. And when you factor in the fact that a lot of people have additional responsibilities like work, perhaps family, if they're a mature student, I think we need to do far more to make sure that we're not just reaching out, but we're trying to make it as accessible as possible to become a representative for postgraduates, which is why in one of my manifesto pledges, I'm saying that I think that postgraduates should be allowed to sit on multiple forums. Because if we think about, again, the very intense schedule that a lot of postgraduates have, making it as easy as possible for the people who have the time to commit to representing them and their peers, they're more able to do so. Speaking, for example, this year, I was elected to be the postgraduate representative for Societies Forum, and that meant that I could not then sit on the postgraduate forum, which I think kind of highlights how disjointed and lacking of in an overall kind of representative strategy that a lot of the SU structures and roles are kind of operating under. And if I were to win the election, I think that would be my number one priority when it came to increasing engagement, increasing the uptake of postgraduates with regards to SU elections and just the wide range of different positions that are available for postgrads to sort of take on and apply their skills to make sure that postgraduates are always being listened to at every level of student governance.
All right, thank you. I mean, you mentioned how part of your manifesto. So what new services, provisions, and spaces would you aim to introduce to support postgraduate students studying abroad?
Yeah, so first and foremost, another one of my pledges is to improve wellbeing services to be more tailored to the unique needs of postgraduates. Speaking again from personal experience, I've found that a lot of the kind of wellbeing resources that you get directed to are kind of more broadly applicable to anyone who is at university. For example, a lot of resources kind of approach it from an angle of assuming that you're either a fresher or assuming that your kind of schedule is more akin to that of an undergraduate. And this is especially salient when it comes to the differences between humanities and STEM degrees, for example, because there is little mention of things like labs and the kind of time commitment that takes out of someone. And I think that wellbeing resources that are more tailored to the needs of postgraduates, especially considering the fact that a lot of them are mature students with family responsibilities, possibly even caring responsibilities, providing resources about how to properly balance academic responsibilities, representational responsibilities within the SU, and just your personal social life. I think the more that can be done with that in that regard, the better, because I think that will just improve the overall student experience and possibly even encourage more people to continue on from undergraduate study at Warwick to become postgraduates, be it taught or research. And additionally, I would like to sort of expand the range of available financial support systems for not just postgraduate students, but all students, but specifically focusing on postgraduate study. Cost is one of the biggest obstacles to people seeking to study postgraduate. I know for a fact that a lot of my friends, a lot of people that I know have been turned away from studying postgraduate simply because the cost is almost insurmountable. You get a loan that can either go towards your tuition fees or your maintenance fees. You're given very little support in terms of the kind of overall financial picture that you're working with. And that often means that you have to work alongside your studies, which obviously brings with it a whole number of well-being challenges with regards to balancing both of those responsibilities at the same time. So essentially what I'm aiming to do is, like I said before, create a more joined up, unified strategy about improving the student experience, both representationally and from a wellbeing perspective, but also provide more easily accessible and clearly communicated support options financially so that nobody misses out on crucial learning for reasons outside of their control.
Yeah, thank you. You earlier mentioned about the international students and the diversity in Warwick. How would you ensure that postgraduate students who come from Warwick from different countries feel welcome and supported during their time here?
Yeah, I think this is a massively important point, especially considering the kind of state of the national politics that we're seeing, a lot of the kind of rhetoric being directed towards people who may have not been born here, but are just as British as anyone who was born here. One of the key points in my manifesto that I'd like to highlight is I'm looking to create more support systems and resources for international students to make sure they feel fully supported throughout their entire time at Warwick. That could take the form of, for example, the kind of employment culture that we have in this country in terms of the different kind of your rights as an employee in this country, which I think is massively important, encouraging unionisation, just so people are aware that they actually have some level of collective bargaining power as a workforce, no matter sort of your nationality, no matter your citizenship status. And basically just making sure that a lot of the kind of hateful, divisive rhetoric that we're seeing on a national level can't take root at this university. We should be proud of the fact that we are one of the most international universities in the world. And that is a massive core pillar of what makes us a great university. And I think that if I were to be elected, I would do absolutely everything in my power to make sure that diversity remains an absolute key tenet of this university and that nobody is allowed to debase that.
Thank you very much. So this will be the last question. Many postgraduates also deliver teaching to students, undergraduates. How would you represent and protect these postgraduates' particular interests?
Yeah, so I'm going to split this into sort of 2 points because I think it's a very, very important point. The first one I would say is that I would definitely look at encouraging students to join workplace unions in terms of that is massively helpful for the fight for more robust contracts, more protective contracts, and also just for pay improvements. Because I think we can see that in a lot of cases, the sort of the pay rates that PGRs are sort of experiencing aren't really reflective of the level of work they're actually doing. We're seeing people putting in massive amounts of work outside of their usual working hours. And especially when you're considering the fact that they're expected to be available 9 to 5, that makes it so difficult to engage with the students' union. It makes it so difficult to engage in the wider community at Warwick. And if we can, through unionisation and through a sort of strong unified push to make sure that we can institute protections for the rights for PGRs to come into the SU, to engage with these sort of structures. Like, for example, yesterday was Student Council. That ran from 4:30 to 7. That is a very inopportune time for PGRs to make that, especially considering the fact that if they have to be in work at 9 a.m. the next day, it may be quite difficult to get home from campus if they haven't driven, or, as we all know, the buses aren't reliable. They aren't really regular. So like these kind of timings for events and SU kind of bodies and different structures, just being able to negotiate for specific provisions in strong, robust contracts to make sure that PGRs are able to essentially dedicate some of their time to engaging with the SU and representing not just themselves, but all postgraduates. And the second part of this, I would say, is that also going back to the Student Council yesterday, I have been one of the most vocal critics, I would suppose to say, of the kind of governance review that's going on at the minute with regards to a lot of the structures within the SU, specifically regarding postgraduates. I think that when we look at sort of the overall picture as to the levels of engagement for postgraduates, I think any kind of attempt to sort of downscale postgraduate representation using lack of engagement as a kind of reasoning, I think is completely in ignorance of the actual problem, which is the fact that the University Students' Union does not do enough to reach out to postgraduate students and to make things more accessible for them. That is the fundamental issue. I feel as though that it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy where there is no postgraduate representation currently because there's low engagement, which subsequently drives the cycle of causing low engagement, which then means that there continues to be no postgraduate representation. So ultimately, I think if the student union can do more to encourage postgraduates to get involved, for example, in my manifesto, I'm pledging to provide introductory documents detailing roles and structures from the very moment you accept your offer to study here at Warwick. If we can do more things like that, I think that in the long term, postgraduate representation will increase, postgraduate engagement will increase, and overall just make the SU more representative of 1/3 of its membership, because at the minute, I don't think it's succeeding in that objective.
All right, thank you very much for that. That will be the end of our questions and the end of this interview. I really wish you the best of luck, Ronny. I hope that this goes well for you, and we will publish this article on Monday. So please let us know if you want to support us. Have a lovely day.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for your time.